2020, we finally know how many of you live here. We'll break down the population data and tell you why it's important and how we can improve upon the 2020 census. Plus, City Council is in the middle of fine-tuning the 2022 City of Minot budget, and they want you to weigh in. And what streets should be avoided next week? It's all coming up this week ahead. Okay, we set goals all the time. We set personal goals. We set professional goals, fitness goals. We set goals that keep us focused. We set them to see what we can achieve and to improve upon ourselves. Not all goals are met, at least if you're setting them correctly, setting them to motivate you and not just setting them to achieve them. We do this all the time in government, setting goals. We do it without thinking about it. The fire department tries to get its response times down. Streets try to clear snow faster every year. Engineering sets goals to improve as many roads as the budget allows every single year. We hit a lot of our goals, but we don't hit them all. Ahead of 2020, the City of Minot set our sights on a goal for the U.S. Census. We wanted to prove that we had 50,000 people living here in Minot. We began an aggressive outreach campaign that included ads, events, and hanging out, bugging you in the grocery store. Some of you might remember it. The tagline, more means more, because it really did for us. 50,000 was an important number that we wanted to hit, and we thought we could. It was a tagline that we used to try to remind you to take 5 minutes to fill out the census application so we could, in fact, get more for Minot. And then COVID hit, taking months of planning and just flipping it on its head. The impacts rippled across communities all over the country, potentially stopping us from reaching our goal of 50,000 strong in Minot. The federal government has officially released our local census data. It states that Minot is at 48,377 people, just short of our goal. Did we fail? Technically, yes, but according to our community development director, not really, not drastically. We missed that mark of 50,000, but we still saw growth. We had to overcome the weirdest census year we probably ever had in the country's history of doing censuses. And it all kind of flipped us around and just kept us from achieving that goal of 50,000 people. Yeah, we didn't make it this time. But who says almost reaching a goal is bad? We still found that we have more people in our community. We just might need more time to reach our goal of 50,000. We're already planning out how. So I took some time to sit down with the man that was tasked with navigating our outreach and now looking at how we can probably get that 50,000 mark before the next census even comes around. I talked with our community development economic director, Brian Billingsley, about issues that 2020 created trying to execute this census and exactly how we can still reach our goal of 50,000 people in just a few years. Now let's talk with the man that sort of led our effort to try to reach that lofty 50,000 count goal, our community development and economic development director, Brian Billingsley. Brian, thanks for taking time for us this morning.
Good morning, Derek. How are you?
I'm doing well. Let's talk about our goal. We missed it. We just missed it, right, Brian? 50,000. It's not a meaningless number. It was an important one, and we just missed that. I want to talk about that importance in just a minute. But and then maybe some potential steps on how we can actually get that later. But first, let's talk about the census's importance to the city of Minot, notably how we govern, how we plan, how we understand our community. Mm-hmm. Why is an accurate count important? And what do you make of the numbers that we actually did achieve from this census?
An accurate count is very important for us here in the community development department. for many reasons. For starters, we're relaunching a complete rewrite of our comprehensive plan that's going to start later this year. We're hoping to have that project wrapped up in 2023. It's very critical to have accurate census data for a comprehensive plan. The data from the census also is used by businesses who they look at communities where they want to build businesses in. We hit the 50,000 plateau. We can probably bring in businesses that we don't have right now that are currently in Bismarck and Fargo and Grand Forks. So I think that it's also very critical that we hit that point, and it would make Minot more attractive for bringing some of these businesses into our community. And it's also used quite heavily by social service organizations and other organizations throughout the city. The university probably uses this data. Businesses definitely use this data to determine their customer base. It's critical information, and although I'm disappointed we didn't hit the 50,000 plateau for Minot, I still am encouraged by the numbers that we have. I think we're very close. And I think within a few years, I think we can attain that 50,000 plateau that we were hoping to hit last year.
So this census, Brian, as you and I are well aware, but many aren't. Well, I think they could probably draw that conclusion. It was like no other that we've really ever had in the history of this country, right?
Right.
Not just for us. Everybody had to deal with 2020, right? And the impacts of the census. Tell us a little bit how, the pandemic and the price of oil falling off. How do you think that impacted this final number?
It definitely impacted the count for Minot. Obviously, with the pandemic, businesses shut down. People worked from home. Social distancing was highly recommended. So it made it difficult for census workers to go out and go door to door and meet with people and talk to them. Fortunately, this was the first census that was done online, that you could go onto the internet and participate that way. I think that helped out a lot. I'd hate to see what our numbers would look like if we didn't have the internet access that was made available in this census. In terms of comparing this census to other censuses in the past, think about all the major wars that our country's had since the beginning of the founding of our government. World War I, World War II, the Civil War, they never were held during a census. So this was probably the most challenging census that our country has ever undertaken. We've never had a situation like this happen before during a census. And to be quite frank with you, Derek, our numbers could have been much worse. And I was really afraid that we may not have even reached 45,000, depending on the kind of participation we had. So I'm pleased with the number of people who did participate. I do think we did lose some people last March when the price of oil dropped. I do believe that some of the people who were living in Minot at the time when the oil fields shut down there for a while there in 2020, they relocated elsewhere and may have counted elsewhere. So I'm not surprised if we would have lost some people to that. I don't know if it would have made the difference to get to 50,000, but still, I think it did have an impact on our census.
You mentioned that you thought it could have been worse going through this process. How do you feel about this final number, which is, 48,000? Help me out here, Brian. I'm working from memory.
48,377.
377.
How do I feel about that number?
If you were expecting that to be worse, if you're fearful that we're on sub 45, this must seem kind of like a relief being at this.
Yeah, it's like I said, it wasn't nothing to celebrate, but it could have been much worse. And my hometown back in Illinois, they dropped 3,000 residents, and they haven't grown very much, obviously, but they lost 3,000 residents, and they went from 27,000 down to 24,000. And in the state of Illinois, you need 25,000 minimum to have home rule. So they're going to lose their home rule. That's critical for that city to lose their home rule status. So the consequences could have been much worse for us. And even though I'm disappointed we didn't hit the goal, I'm not surprised that we finished in the 48s. It could have been much worse, but I thought hitting 50,000, I thought we had very little room for error to hit 50,000. I thought everything would have to line in our favor perfectly for us to hit that 50,000 plateau. And obviously we didn't hit that mark.
So when I think, because you weren't here back during the oil boom.
No.
When I think back to 8 years ago, I think there is almost no doubt from many people that we had well over 50,000 people in our community. We had hotels that were rented out in zero capacity. We had housing being built just as fast as humanly possible. But then the oil industry hit a few speed bumps. Then it also corrected itself. It wasn't that boom anymore. It was just it's been managing since along the way. We witnessed growth few imagined, but then we started to see that decrease. At least that's what the census estimates show from those years. But this new data does prove that we have grown in Minot and the surrounding communities. What do you think that indicates for us? I think Ward County was like an 18-ish% increase.
Mm-hmm.
How does that impact us, and what does that tell us?
Well, that tells us that we're growing again. Our permits are up this year, much higher than they were in 2019. So even with the pandemic, we're still growing. We're growing at a faster rate than we were 2 years ago. We've issued permits for 250 new housing units since the beginning of 2020. That right there alone, once those housing units are built and occupied, will push our census count to around 49,000. And at that point, I think we have about 450 more housing units we need to build at that point, and then to reach the 50,000 plateau. And at the rate of construction we're going at right now, I think we can hit that mark in 3 years.
3 years is what you're saying? Because that was my next point, is just because we didn't hit it now, it's still a goal for us.
Yes.
We haven't wrote this off at all, because 50,000 is a meaningful number. We didn't just pluck that out of thin air in 2019 when we were gearing up for the census.
Yes.
Help us understand the importance of why 50,000 matters so much for us.
Well, for starters, for city government, it matters because we would be eligible for community development block grant funding. The city I worked for prior to Minot, we hit the 50,000 plateau in 2014, and we were eligible for $425,000 a year of federal funding that we could use to eliminate blight and infrastructure improvements. And it was a pretty broad program that would be very beneficial to the people of Minot. Also, from the private sector standpoint, like I said earlier, it helps us bring in more business, more activity. It puts us on lists of businesses nationwide that they look at us and go, okay, hey, Minot's ready to go now. They have 50,000 residents. It's a really big number for Minot, not only just for our government, but for the people of the city, and adding to the number of businesses we have, our job base. It's critical that we hit 50,000 as quickly as possible. So in my opinion, the number one priority right now is to add some more rooftops to our community to get us to that point of hitting 50,000. We're very close. And like I said, it could have been much worse, but I think we can hit that mark in 3 years, Derek.
So is there anything else we can do? You've mentioned a couple of times that we will need to add more buildings, places for people to live, but how do we get people in to live in those buildings? I mean, we can build stuff all over, but if there's no bodies to populate, it doesn't really matter in the long run. What else can we do to help us reach this important milestone? Hopefully that the goalposts don't potentially move in the future, right? 50,000 is still relevant in the 2-3 years you think we could potentially petition for that count. What else can we do as a local government, as a community? What else needs to happen to help us get there?
More economic development programs would certainly help. The more jobs that we can create, the more people we can attract to Minot. We're also a regional hub for this area as well. And there's a lot of people that live in this region, but they commute back and forth to Minot every day or maybe every week for services, or maybe to work here. And, by adding this extra housing, maybe these people may want to relocate it to our municipality rather than drive, 20, 30, 40 miles a day back and forth. So, there's many different ways we can do it. The best way to do it is obviously through economic development. Creating more jobs will certainly bring more people to our city.
It sounds like you have your work cut out for you because your department is very unique. You are in charge of the inspections and building permits, right? So you are in charge of
Correct.
making sure that what we build is up to standard and
Mhm.
safe. You're in charge of planning, which is huge for this. Where things go, how we grow as a community, and then of course under your department, you also have that key aspect that you just mentioned, economic development. Are you
Mhm.
guys ready to start really making that push, that sort of 2-3 year goal to try to get us into that estimated range for 50,000? Are we ready?
Most, yeah, most certainly. We're very busy right now. The number of phone calls coming in my office for new business starts is amazing. We're meeting with probably at least two people a week. They're talking to us about building businesses or even housing developments too. So um, we're very busy right now, much busier than we were 2 years ago. I don't think it's 2012 all over again, but it's certainly good growth, good development, some very good opportunities. And I think that what you're going to see over the next couple of years of Minot is some definite growth that's going to be good for the community, and we're going to provide more housing options for the community. A lot of the NDR projects that are coming through now should be ready and occupied later this year or even next year in 2023. So we're going to have a wide variety of housing, everything from single family dwellings all the way to apartments and everything in between.
Message, move to Minot, right? That's what you're telling me.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
All right, Brian, is there anything else you think we should sort of glean from this new population data for Minot, for Ward County, for North Dakota? Anything else you think is important to point out from the census data?
Yeah, the most important thing to understand is, from what I was told, that the people who were monitoring the census at the state level, they thought that our population count at the state level would be around 770,000. I think we eclipsed that by 10,000, which is that was a good sign from the very beginning that our census numbers eclipsed what they had thought, which is great for the state of North Dakota because the state receives about $19,000 a year in federal funding for every resident that lives here. So, and is counted in our census, obviously. So it's really encouraging to hear that we finished 10,000 above. So that should help with federal funding coming into our state for all various types of programs that from WIC to childcare to education and all across the board, even highway construction projects. It should bring in more federal funding into our state than we had received before the 2020 census.
Anything else you can think of, Brian? What else did we miss?
Uh, I, you know, I'm tapped out.
Oh yeah.
I'm,
Okay. I'm sorry to
I'm
exhaust.
censused out. I'm thankful I have to wait another 10 years for the next census.
I hope to have you here in 24, 36 months and we'll talk about this again.
Well, the Census Bureau comes out with estimates every year. They won't go door to door and count people again. They only do that every 10 years. But what they'll do is they'll monitor the number of building permits we've issued, the number of homes we've demolished, and and then also monitor the vacancy rates of our homes as well. And they'll come out with estimates every year. I'm hoping in 2024 we can hit that number. If we keep growing at the rate we're growing now, I think we can hit that number in 24.
Maybe we'll just schedule our next conversation now. How about that?
All right.
All right, Brian, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking time for us today. That's Brian Billingsley, our Community and Economic Development Director. He's got his plate full trying to get us to that 50,000 mark. We just missed it for the census, but there's still hope. We don't have to wait a whole 10 years before we find out if we can reach that again. So
that's right.
Best of luck to you and your staff, Brian. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Derek.
All right, now this week ahead, our council looks to roll up their metaphorical sleeves and dial in on the 2022 budget with a special workshop meeting coming up on Monday at 5:30 p.m. in council chambers. Now, earlier this month, staff presented the 2022 budget to council that includes a slight mill levy change for the city's portion of the budget. Remember, the city, Ward County, Minot Public Schools, the Park District, we all have separate budgets that impact your property tax differently. It's not all one, it just comes to you as one. To put this budget, which is roughly about a third of your property tax bill, depending on how the math checks out when everyone's all done, to put this to a dollar amount for you, if the budget is approved as it is right now with the $2.28 million increase, for every $100,000 value of your home, the city's portion of your property tax bill will be up about $10.26 a year due to the change in that mill levy, which for a $200,000 home would be about $20.52 annually, so on and so forth. This is all preliminary, guys. Monday is about finding where the council is most comfortable with this next budget. It cannot increase, but it could decrease. I know many council members want your input. You can submit those through our comment portal on our website, minotnd.org/public comments, and let them know what you think. Of course, you can come to the meeting on Monday as well. We will be live on Facebook and YouTube and all of these channels you're watching this on, and you can be a part of that discussion as well. You can also expect a letter to your home from Ward County that outlines the respective impact of all the taxing agencies' budgets on your property, with a list of all the public hearings that you can expect coming up in the next month or so. So look towards that, and we'll have a better idea of where the council's palette is on our 2022 budget, probably after Monday and into the next week or so after that. All right, I tried to warn you guys about August, and I hope you took note. There is work absolutely everywhere on our streets, and that's not changing. This week ahead, there's a ton. So you need to make sure you check our road closures map, minotnd.org/road closures. But, if you just want the Cliff Notes, here's a few things I think you should know for sure, where it's kind of the most impactful. Access on 28th Street Southwest. Think like that turn west towards like the Menards area off of Broadway. That's going to be closed about 10 days right there. So you're going to need to navigate around that situation. Just down the road as well, 31st Avenue Southwest between Broadway and 4th Street will also be closed. Local traffic, beware of that. Of course, you've probably seen it already. You'll still see it coming up this week ahead. Street sealing and chip sealing, they remain active all over. Let's go quick process. I'm not exactly sure where they're going to be because they kind of move all over. They're in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. You'll see them though. Watch out for the orange cones and the loose rocks and oil. You can expect most of that this week ahead. Not to mention, Burdick will have some spotty work. We're gearing up for more ADA ramp installs in the weeks ahead. A lot of work on Burdick coming up still for the rest of the season. Again, make sure you check the full map and check our project map if you're curious on what else might be coming your way, minotnd.org/projects. That's going to do it for me for this week ahead. Thank you very much for joining me on this weekend. Of course, tell your friends to like and subscribe us on all our social media pages. Make sure that they know what's happening in the city that they live in. That we're at City of Minot just about everywhere. Tell them about this program. Tell them about our newsletter as well. You can subscribe to that by going to minotnd.org/the-latest. And of course, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for joining me this week ahead.